Hello and welcome to Game Token Watch with me, Jon Jordan. This is our first video in what we hope will be an ongoing series, and in this series we'll be looking at blockchain games and blockchain game projects, and in particular we'll be looking at the tokens that underpin how these projects and these games work. At this early point, should point out this is not investment advice. I will not be giving you investment advice. I'm not looking to become a millionaire doing this. This is for intellectual curiosity. So obviously blockchain tokens as a whole can go up and down in value, and actually in this introductory video we'll be looking actually in this early stage about how pretty much the vast majority of game projects are doing terribly in terms of their token value against the dollar at least. So do not expect me to be telling you to invest in certain projects. I won't be doing that. For me, this is at the moment at least intellectual curiosity. I'm not investing thousands of dollars, I'm not investing hundreds of dollars. I'm investing at most tens of dollars in these projects, and I'm doing this for intellectual curiosity and also because for these projects, games or game projects themselves, the tokens are useful if you are using those services, which is what I'm doing. So I'm doing it for the utility basis and for the intellectual curiosity. So glad we got that out of the way. Let's go and have a look at a graph. I like graphs. So in this graph here we can see this is the performance of various game tokens. So here we have 20 game tokens tracking their performance over Q2 2018. So that's the period 1st of April to 30th of June, a typical financial quarter. So what can we see here? Well, we can see there are only 4 of those 20 game tokens are in blue, which means that their value against the dollar increased during that 2-month period. And then we have, by definition of math, the other 16 declined in value. Now what we can see, I've also added here, you can see there's Ether, which actually increased in value. So Ether is the second biggest blockchain token, and it powers a lot of these games and game services, partly because everyone ICOs on Ethereum, but also because a lot of these game tokens are Ethereum based tokens. The other thing we also have here, as you can see at the top of the red lines, is a Bitcoin. So Bitcoin and Ether are just there for comparative purposes. We can see Ether went up by just over, just about 13%, I think. We can see Bitcoin as its dollar price went down. So it just gives us an idea how the broader market is going. Clearly at this stage of the market, whatever Bitcoin does tends to have a massive impact on other cryptocurrencies. Anyway, so we can see in terms of the projects, those tokens went up. There was 4. Theta, which is a distributed video delivery service. So particularly focused on games, but could be for any type of video delivery. That went up quite strongly, quite a strong tech team working on that project. Although, as with a lot of blockchain games projects, it is not a finalized project yet, very much in development. Also doing well was Wax. So Wax is interesting. It is a game item marketplace. Again, not a completed project by any means, but certain building blocks of that project being released through mainly through OP Skins, which is an existing game item marketplace project, but not a blockchain one. Next up we have Mana. Mana is the token of Decentraland. Decentraland is quite a well-known blockchain game kind of platform, user-generated content, has a strong VR theme to it. Again, still in development, early stages. And the last one there is PlayKey, which is a game streaming, cloud-based game streaming service. So those were the only game tokens whose value, if you held them, increased during Q2. Again, not saying this is investment advice, but it's just interesting to have an idea about that these projects were to some degree gaining some sort of confidence in their ability, I guess, to perform. The vast majority, though, this is kind of really what I'm stressing here, the vast majority, 16 of those game tokens, all decreased in value. And we can see some of them decreased quite heavily, so that the worst performing, if we want to use that term, the worst performing token that lost over 60% of its value was D Market, which a bit like Wax is a game item place, but that had a recently ICO'd, excuse me, and has immediately lost most of its value. Obviously, if you had spent any money in D Market, you would not be very happy at the moment, even in dealing if you had bounties and that kind of stuff. Not done very well. But we can see the vast majority of these projects are not performing well, and some of these projects we would not be surprised about. Some of them are a bit sketchy, but some of them are quite well regarded, have a certain amount of longevity. So BitCrystal, the BCY, has been going for a number of years now as a platform and as a developer of blockchain games. That was down almost 25%. Kin, which is from the Kik Messenger group, very big Canadian mobile messenger company trying to get into blockchain projects. Again, there's not really a use case yet. They're still working on their project, but again, that's down over 25%. Referium, RFR, very much liked in the media. A US company did a fairly successful ICO at the start of the year, again heavily downing. So I'm not going to go through all these, but just the wider point is that you could have been lucky and you could have bought Theta if you were trying to invest, but equally, as we're going to see in our later graph, there is a very strong downward trend to all these things, which is why I'm interested in them for curiosity's sake rather than investment sake. So let's have a look at our second graph, and this really is a grim reading. So in this graph here, I've taken the performance of these tokens, their dollar value, for the first 6 months of 2018. So obviously the context for this is at the end of 2017 there was a big spike in Bitcoin price, which drove pretty much every other altcoin price up as well. So in a sense there's no surprise, because since the kind of start of the year, we can see here Bitcoin is down over 50%, Ether as well, down over 50%. So the two big blockchain tokens, two big cryptocurrencies have basically lost half their value because of this big kind of peak, this big kind of speculative peak that drove up at the end of last year. This is not to say that certainly Ethereum doesn't have any use. I'm a bit more skeptical about Bitcoin's utility in the long run, but that's a video for another time. But we can see here that even in this case, so we've got 14 game tokens here. Obviously, game tokens are coming online, gaining liquidity and doing ICOs all the time. So I think we had 20 that were kind of live during that 3-month period of Q2. For the 6-month period of 2018, only 14 were around for that length of time. And we can see again, all of them are down, but the vast majority, so 3 did slightly better than Ethereum, but of the 14, 11 did much worse. And we can see here again, with the exception of 2 tokens, they all lost at least half their value. So if you were investing at the start of this year into any altcoin, but certainly any game project coins, you weren't having a nice time of it. And you have to say, really, even though that was a kind of a peak, and probably now people may be buying these coins again, some of these coins will really now are unlikely to regain certainly the heights at the start of the year, but are really unlikely to kind of regain any kind of value, I would suggest. Certainly some of these ones that we've got, and it's interesting because these ones have been around for a period of time. So we've got Unicorn, second from bottom. We've got First Blood. I mean, that's been going for a number of years. We've got Mobile Go, again, been running for over kind of 2 years now. Hunter Coin is the longest running one, 2014. So these are not kind of new coins that people are unsure about. These are all coins that have been around for a while, tokens that have been around for a while. Again, interestingly, we saw in our first graph that Wax was one that had done quite well over the Q2 period. But there we go in the middle. Wax has lost over 75% of its value from the start of the year, and that's a project that most people would say is a well-funded project, and coming out from a well-run company that understands its market and is certainly doing something ambitious. But just whether you could argue, is this a reflection on what people think Wax as a project is doing, or whether this has just been driven down by Bitcoin? It's hard to know, but the fact is, if you're holding Wax at the start of the year, you've lost 75% of that value. So this is kind of the problem, and this is why we'll come back to the thing. This is not about investing at this point, and this is much more about intellectual curiosity. So we can see, I guess for the intellectual curious sake, we can see Mana is the best performing in the sense that it's the least worst performing. Mana, I think Decentraland is an interesting project. I don't think it's ever going to be a massive kind of blockchain success, but it is I think a niche which is well understood and has lots of developer support. I own about $10 of Mana. I also do own about $10 of Wax as well. What else do I own? Let's have a look down the list. Engine, so ENJ, again, lost getting on for 75% of its value over the last 6 months. It's an interesting idea. It's a kind of a game item place marketplace, a company that kind of understands what it's doing, doing some quite nice technical work. I've got $10 of that. I've got $10 of Kin as well. There we go. I think that's my intellectually curious investments at the moment. So anyway, it's just a quick introduction into the world of blockchain game tokens, blockchain games, and in this case, these aren't blockchain games. In the majority of cases, these are blockchain game kind of services and products, not the games themselves. That will come later. But I do think it is intellectually interesting to get involved in these kind of projects, and looking at tokens is a way of getting an idea about which ones are getting traction. Obviously, there's other metrics you could use. You could see how many users they've got, or you could look at things like transactions. So certainly for some of the games, if they're a distributed game, you can kind of look at how many users they've got, how many transactions are being run through the system, how much ether is being spent for these kind of DApp games at least. So there's different ways of doing it. This is not the only way, but this is kind of an interesting one, I think, and a bit of a kind of gives you a high end view of what's going on. So that's something we're going to look at over the coming months. Thanks for watching this one. I hope to see you again.